How did Steve Barker's plan to beat Kaizer Chiefs backfire so bad? Don't get me wrong, it was a very good plan, but somehow it just backfired. But what's also impressive about this, as we're going to look at, is the fact that what Khalil Ben Youssef and Cedric Kaze had done, this man was just not backing off. He was trying to implement what he wanted to do before and even after his team got a red card. Let's look at exactly how that happened. Hello and welcome to the Cutback. I am Bilo, and here we analyze South African football content. So to make sure to subscribe to the channel because it is 27 minutes to 1 at night, and here I am recording this video. So let's start with early on in the game. Very first 10 seconds, the watch wasn't even up yet, and you can see pivots are tightly marked. By pivots, by the way, for those of you who may not understand, we're talking about the 2 6s that Kaizer Chiefs play, who then one of them can become a box-to-box midfielder and the other one stays behind. So in this case, you have Ucele, who's tightly marked by De Jong, and you see that the intention by De Jong is not to go and put pressure on the ball, is to make sure that he goes with Ucele. Even when he goes to the side, he goes with him, which opens the space for who? Ungobo. When he gets the ball, Butsaka jumps in like a madman. He tries to press him, but then Ungobo sees space, he tries to dribble into that space. Forgets that Titus was told, do not let him turn. So he's on to him. And then they win the ball back, quick counter, and then they try to score. And this was basically the plan by Stellenbosch. Press them, and then quick counter. That's all that they are doing. They were not like a defensive sitting back team. From the get-go, you could see they want to press very high. They want to force the mistakes from the double pivots of Chiefs, and then they want to counter while Chiefs are out of position. Well, it continues because there are a lot of receipts here. So you will also note here that De Jong is there, Butsaka is there, pressing our double pivots, right? And then if you look, Barnes is also pressing the right back, Umonyane, and Titus on top of your screen is pressing across. And we're going to look at exactly what Chiefs were actually trying to do with cross as the video continues. So watch. So now, what basically happens here is that this forces Chiefs now to basically say, we can't play the ball to the right or to the left. We can't play it back again because Cupido is also just there monitoring the pass back to the defenders. So since this can't happen, Chiefs would try to chip the ball over to the last line of attack, which had Uhlongwane in it. But then this is now when you see this guy that I'm highlighting, Ubani Upalace. Palace is moving across. Where is he coming from? Because he was marking Umtutuzi Shabalala on the top right hand of the screen. So basically now what is happening, since Chiefs also had Uhlongwane dropping to collect the ball, someone had to track him. And this is where it slightly got complicated for Stellenbosch. But that's not all. We're going to look at it. So what's happening here is that now Palace basically is trying to come and press is trying to press Uhlongwane. But at the same time, you will see that Umoloisane, who is just to the left of Upalace, is also moving across or moving up to press Uhlongwane. And as this happens, Moloisane and Daga are also pushing further up. These men are inside the half of Kaizer Chiefs. They are not scared of pressing. They were not scared. And as it happens, now look at what happens. As this defensive line pushes up, one pass now can do damage to the entire Stellenbosch because the defenders are higher up and Shabalala has been left alone by Palace, and now one pass moves across and all of a sudden they are defending facing their own goal. Now the ball can be played across to Lilepo, who can either make a run in behind and try to score, but this time around they were able to recover. But that's not it, because Chiefs had another thing that they wanted to do with Bradley Cross. So what they did with him is what we've seen with Nkangiso Shinga, and that is to invert him into midfield. Because if you remember earlier on, I showed you that Titus, if Cross was on the left-hand side, Titus would be with him. So basically that's blocking any pass to the left. So to try and kind of create some space on the left-hand side, then you'd see Bradley Cross inverting. And in him inverting, look at what that has done. It has now opened that passing lane to Uklodi Lilepo, who can now get the ball and be able to drive into these spaces. And also note what Chiefs were doing when it comes to these passes. It wasn't a direct pass because then Titus is ready to come and move across. But they would play the ball to cross, which would draw Titus in. The ball is played back and then wide. And then you have Lilepo now trying to drive up. So that was the plan. And this is how Stellenbosch were responding. Now, once again, just look at the madness of all of this. Look at the madness. Everyone is marked, and then Cupido is the man who's supposed to be marking two people at once. And because Chiefs were kind of forced, everything was just blocked. They ended up having to just go long at times because the pressure was so intense. Now, before we talk about quick attacks, I'm sure you're enjoying the content. So please, please do subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends. You're not going to find content like this anyway. I'm positive. Anyways, we move. So you can see that I am speed ramping this video showing the quick attacks that Stellenbosch were trying to do as quickly as possible. But this is in normal speed without anything made faster. You can see that it's a throw in. Stellenbosch at this point, they are not losing the match. It's still 0-0. But what are they doing? Look at how fast they are trying to take that throw in. They are trying to take the throne as quickly as possible because they want to attack. It's early on in the game. It's clear that the plan was to get a goal as quickly as possible while they are still out of position. Position, not possession, position. So, yeah, in trying to do that, then you will see them winning the ball and trying to score. Once again, what you just saw is Ucele being pressed. They get the ball from him, and now they play the ball across, and then they take a shot. Here comes the red card. Now, the unfortunate thing is here at the stadium, I don't even remember how the build-up went, but the elements of what we've been talking about, Stellenbosch pushing up and all of those things are going to be seen here. But SAPC, not SAPC. SuperSport was busy showing fans, so we don't have the clip of how the ball started from the back. But the elements that we're talking about are still there. So let's start. You see that, as we were saying, Moloisane is there, right? You have Umdaga, red arrow, marking Utuba. And then on top of your screen, you have Lilepo. Lilepo is pulling the right back towards him. Now, with that happening, with Lilepo being on the right and him pulling Kazi to him, that creates a huge gap because now Moloisan is also tracking Ubani Uhlongwan, as we said earlier on. So that means the back four now has those huge gaps between them. And as I said earlier on with that warning shot, now they have to defend that entire space. Hlongwane has two options. He can play the through ball to Mdu or he can play the ball to Hlongwane. He chooses Mdu, and this is a problem. Nkwali has no idea what's even happening behind him. He might have known because his hand goes up. But in his hand going up, he's denying a clear goal scoring opportunity because there's no cover here. Mdu was going to be through and was going to score. And that's how Kaizer Chiefs get their chance. At this point, I was like, oh man, I did not want this to happen. I did not want them to get a red card because I wanted the game to be 11v11. But then again, you could make an argument that they got to a 10v11 because their setup was so risky. High risk, high reward. Good free kick by Ungcobo when I initially looked at it. But when I looked at it again, I got pissed off because Ngobo takes his free kick. But why did Moloisane leave his place? Because if he just stays there, the ball probably hits his face or he headers the ball. But since he's moved out, then the ball can just go through that space where that is opened, and then it's now a goal. Take nothing from the strike by Ungcobo, but if I'm a keeper, I'm pissed off at Moloisane for doing that, which now means Chiefs are 1-0 up. And this is when the commentators, when I was now listening to it on TV, are like, yeah, the coach is going to make changes. And I was sitting with Uzulu even at the stadium saying, okay, now they're probably going to sacrifice Cupido or Barnes or Titus and bring in a defender because, I mean, their center back got a red card. Steve Barker was like, nah, hold my Rama. And then what it does, you can see that in the initial setup, it's at 114. In the initial setup, you see that it was more of a 4-1-4-1 because you have Cupido being up front, and then you have the four that are behind. The two wide, which is Titus and Pans, and then the two central, which is De Jong and Butsaka. This man goes and then he just changes the whole situation. And now, instead of defending and being solid and thinking about, oh, we've conceded, this is how Stellenbosch start looking like after they concede a goal. They look like this. You see what has changed? There's only one thing that has changed. Cupido is no longer pressing the defenders, the center backs. You see what has happened? Centrally, pivots are still being pressed. That has not changed. Number two, the wide players are still pressing the wide right back and the full back. The only thing that has changed is that Cupido has now shifted wide because, well, someone had to shift and become a defender, and that person would be Ubans. But in the meantime, you can see that De Jong was not trying to press the center backs. Instead, he was still trying to stay on Ucele in the middle. And then they took Ubans and made him the right back. So he's just basically a right wing back because he was going up and down. So the system changed from being a 4-1-4-1 to being a 4-1-4. Still putting pressure where they needed to put pressure. And that is why Stellenbosch was still looking dangerous, because the creativity from Chiefs' perspective wasn't really coming from the defenders are able to play the ball and manipulate it and make progress the ball, right? They can, but they're not like finding a way of finding those defensive splitting passes from them to Mtu Shabalala, because the pivots were blocked, so there was no way of passing them. The only way was to now find Mtu Shabalala. Was always tightly marked, as we talked about, by Upalis. So then how are you going to find space? That is why the game still looked almost similar even after the red card, because the main important things were still kept the same. So Barnes is now on the right, so they continue playing the same way. Cross was still inverting, obviously, which was supposed to create some problems for Stellenbosch in that midfield. But Ucele was also still struggling because, as we said, that was still the issue. The midfield was still blocked. And Stellenbosch would try and counter, but Chiefs were also counter pressing. And you can see they were winning the ball within 5 seconds of losing it. And then they would go on a counter and try to score. Now, this is where some people get this wrong. Walter, shout out to Walter, asked me if Chiefs were playing counters. They were counter pressing, which would lead to counter attacks. But the fact that I just said counter press, if you're counter pressing, that means you had the ball and you are trying to recover the ball. If you're a team that is playing just counters, because you can counter press, which means trying to win the ball back after losing it, right? And then have a counter attack. Or you can just sit and defend and win the ball back and then counter attack. These two things might sound the same, but they're not. The first one is you're sitting deep, waiting for them to come to you. You win the ball and then you attack them. But if you are attacking and you're winning the ball back, who was attacking? You were attacking. And then you lost the ball. And then you win it back. And then the end goal now is once again an attack. You get me? So it might seem like our Chiefs were doing a lot of counters. They were doing a lot of counters because they lost the ball and then they would win it back immediately. And then it would look like, oh, they've been defending all along and they're now trying to do counter attacks. Yes, they did counter attacks, but from a counter press and not just sitting deep and absorbing pressure. I hope I'm clear. Which then brings us to Chiefs, Stelli's chances. You will see the same element, right? Chiefs are attacking, then Stellenbosch wins the ball, and then they try to attack as quickly as possible. Stellies win the ball, and then they try to go and attack. Stellies win the ball, and then they quickly try and attack. Again, they go long at times, and then they try one touch, second touch, win the second ball, and try to score. You have this same situation. The ball was going long. Chiefs intercepts. Moloisane throws the ball to Umdaga. Umdaga, who then plays the ball quickly into the box and then the ball is saved. And this was the last shot. This is the 45th minute plus 2 minutes that were added. It was on the second minute that was added. And they did not shoot after this until the 73rd minute. And that had to do with this one change. Because now there was Ox Mtetwa. Cross is out of position because we're attacking. McCarthy moves across to cover him. And then now Ox is there to cover him. When I thought things didn't get crazy, because I was like, okay, Steve Barker went back to playing just a 4-1-4. No. Second half, he goes back. Now, he can't play a 4-1-4 because he's lost one player. So he just says, you know what, forget the cover. We're just going to press them. We're just going to play a 4-4. Like a 4-4-1. I find that crazy because if you look at this, you see that now they are doing the same thing they were doing first half. Except now that instead of having Cupido stay as on the left, they're now pushing everyone up there like we're pressing. When a Palace, because Palace was staying deeper because now they were playing basically a sort of a 4-1-4. They just changed to a 4-4-1 again because Palace would stay behind in the first half, as I showed earlier, to kind of cover and make sure that Mtutuzi didn't get the ball. Now they just went forward and they all just were like, okay, we're going to make a flat 4. Cupido is going to go back and disrupt the defenders. It's bold. So they did it. They did it. They still tried to force Chiefs. Titus was now in a situation whereby he was marking two people. The first one is McCarthy. The second one by a cover shadow. He would press cross. By a cover shadow, I just mean you stand in such a way that the person behind you does not get the ball. You are blocking their passing lane so they don't get a direct pass. So that's what was happening. And if the ball went long to cross, because that was the only way to get the ball to cross, chip it over Titus. But what would then happen is Ubans. I wrote Mdaga here, but it's actually Bans. Bans would step up on the right to try and put pressure there, and then Chiefs would have to go back. And you still see the same system again. On the right-hand side, you'll see, right-hand side of Kaizer Chiefs, you'll see Mdaga also stepping up. But then Chiefs, again, this is a perfect example. Chiefs were on the ball, Mdaga steps up, he wins the ball, then Chiefs have to win it back again. So upon winning it back, now they're countering and then they're trying to get a goal. And then you can see what Ox was doing. He was there covering for who's this guy? Who's the right back? Nyozela, it's 10-1 in the morning. Was in the right. To say son. Utabi Sogoto, yeah, Umonyane, yes. On the right. He was covering for him. He was there to disrupt play and make sure that they did not want to play. Wow. So at 12:20, I realized that I'm not going to continue and talk about the other things because I think I've covered the basic things. Because Abondlovu bangenile and they did things. We can do a video about him some other time, but for now, I think I'll leave it here because if I continue, then I'll be late for work. But what did you guys think of this game? Have you subscribed? Yeah, subscribe. Yes, I did promise you that I would say what should Chiefs do better. I think that one of a few things is if they're gonna make a cross invert and become a second 10 or become a 6 and push Umshini to become a floating 10, there should be more movement and they should do it much earlier so that we can force them to come central and then we can play the ball wide. Or if they keep across at the back as part of a back three, someone else has to get into midfield. There should be a lot of movement and the ball must move much faster because what has been happening is that the ball does not move as fast as it should, especially if you're playing against teams that are going to press you. Because what we've seen so far this season is that teams don't seem to be scared of who they're playing. They're trying to attack. They don't care about you. But yeah, subscribe to the channel and I will see you on the next one. Today Sundowns is playing and Pirates are playing, so that means I'm making those videos later on. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe and bye bye.